Hey folks, this week I wanted to take a look at some basic tuning for Ryzen CPUs and also show you why you really should spend this small amount of time getting things polished up when you first get a Ryzen system, or even if you're upgrading to a newer CPU on your existing AM4 platform. The processor I'm using for this is a used eBay buy in the form of a Ryzen 9 3900 XT. Originally I had intended to make a Ryzen tuning video using a Ryzen 5000 series CPU, but when this 3900 XT was coming in at less than the price of a 5600X, I really couldn't say no, and the steps that I'm going to go through today will be applicable to pretty much anyone on the Ryzen platform. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now at this point I think everyone will be aware that the performance of a Ryzen system is tied very closely to how the system memory is configured. Likewise, I'm sure that you're aware that just because you've bought yourself a nice set of fast RAM, simply plugging it into the motherboard won't mean that it's running at the advertised speeds. At a very basic level, what you want to do is just head into your BIOS and select the XMP profile. Now, depending on which motherboard you're using, this may be located and called something slightly different, but the fact remains that you're going to need to activate it. On this system, we're going from the stock DDR4 profile of 2666 MHz to the XMP profile of 3600. Which is what my kit is rated at. Now, depending on your motherboard and individual CPU combo, you might not be able to get what is advertised on the box. There's no guarantees here, as technically it is overclocking, but if you fail to boot at the advertised speed, simply dial it back and try again, until you find a profile that works. Now, I do know that Ryzen Master can be a bit divisive, as I know a few of you would prefer to use something like Clock Tuner for Ryzen or simply do it through the BIOS, which can give you more control and granularity for your overclocks. But for 95% of the users out there, Ryzen Master is still a good tool to get some extra oomph out of your system. Now, there's two basic options we can look at. Firstly, if you've got a compatible motherboard and processor, you can simply turn on Precision Boost Overdrive or PBO. In very basic terms, this will automatically and intelligently allow more power to be used by the CPU to push the clocks up a bit. At the moment on this system, I've got a tower cooler installed which is using 92mm fans. So larger tower coolers or AIO liquid coolers might have more headroom and net you an extra 50 to 100 MHz. But essentially this is a simple one-click option. The second is to manually tune the clock speeds and voltages. Now, it's probably not going to be a surprise that this is my preferred option, as undervolting the CPU has numerous benefits and can actually allow you to maintain higher clock speeds on average over longer periods, by giving you more thermal headroom. Less voltage equals less heat, which means better boost behaviour. So for this video, I'm coupling a conservative all-core overclock on this 3900 XT of 4.35 GHz at 1.275 volts. What this means is that the CPU will now only boost to a max of 4350 MHz, but will do so across all 12 cores and will max out at 1275 mV. At stock, you can register speeds of up to 4.7 GHz, which is what is quoted on the processor spec sheet, but it's an infinitesimally small amount of time that you're ever going to see that speed. In most multi-core workloads, I was seeing boost clocks of just over 4 GHz at stock, and PBO pushed that figure up by about 50 to 75 MHz. In workloads which were less multi-threaded, the speed would often surpass 4.5 GHz on a few cores, but could really fall anywhere in the range of that 4 GHz mark to 4.5. So with that out of the way, why would you want to go through these steps? Well, just looking at the steps mentioned, we can kind of break it into 4 different configurations. Firstly, out of the box, no XMP profile, no clock tuning, simply plugged in and turned on. Secondly, simply turning on the XMP profile for your memory in the BIOS, which in our case here bumps up the RAM speed from 2666 to 3600. Next, we've got a config with XMP and PBO turned on, and finally we've got the system with the XMP profile loaded and a manual all-core overclock of 4.35 GHz and an undervolt of 1.275 volts. We'll call this the ACO configuration. To get an idea of what's going on with each of these configs, we can start with CPU-Z, which has a little benchmarking tool built in, and will quickly load up the CPU and test its single and multi-threaded performance. It's a quick benchmark and results can vary by a percentage or so to mitigate that, I've run through it in each configuration a dozen times and averaged out the scores. In single thread, we can see very little difference between the stock and XMP results. While the PBO results pulls forward slightly, there's not really much in it. The all-core overclock does consistently fall short of the rest of the pack though, but we know that its boost will cap out at 4.35 GHz, so it's to be expected. Where the ACO config really comes into its own though is in its multi-core score. While stock, XMP and PBO results all are fairly tightly packed, the ACO gives a score almost 10% better than stock and 8% better than the PBO results. So in multi-threaded workloads, the gains should be fairly tangible when choosing to lose a little bit of that single core performance and focus on multi-core. These results are mirrored when running through Cinebench R20. In the single core tests, stock, XMP and PBO pulls ahead of the ACO config slightly, 2% when compared to PBO, but are again decimated to the tune of around 8.5 to 11% when it comes to multi-core. I thought it would be interesting at this point to touch on power and thermals during an extended render test, and when we have a look at these figures we can get an understanding as to how the scores were achieved. Ryzen 3000 allows measurement of core power draw and also package power draw, which includes elements like the IO die. At stock, the cores peaked at 118 watts and the total package power peaked at 133 watts. Now it's worth noting that this is not a sustained power draw. The power draw did drop off from this peak value that I've quoted. With the XMP profile, the 12 cores returned the same value of 118 watts, while the total package draw increased slightly to 137 watts, which to me makes sense as we're making the IO die work a little bit harder with the faster system memory. This resulted in a maximum temperature increase by the end of the render by 1 degree centigrade, going from 84 degrees C to 85. Activating PBO on top of the XMP profile sees the core power draw increase to 151 peak wattage, and total package power to 175 watts peak. Like the previous configs, this was a peak power draw only and it did tail off, but the higher average power draw did result in a temperature by the end of the test of 92 degrees C. The ACO config, which also undervolts, fared much better than the PBO config here. A max core power draw of 130 watts and a max package draw of 151 watts meant that by the end of the render, the CPU was only sitting 4 degrees higher than stock and 4 degrees lower than the PBO config. And remember, that's with a huge boost to multi-core performance. But how about gaming then? Well, the line for so long has always been games love a strong single thread, and to some extent, depending on the game engine, that is true. But you're not simply running a game, are you? You've got an OS, multiple drivers and continual IO hits. When we say that some game engines are lightly threaded, it doesn't mean that only 2 or 3 cores are going to be used by your system while running a game. And the trend over the last couple of years, as games have become even more multi-threaded, is that multi-core performance is mattering a lot more than it did in the old days of Sandy Bridge and Ivy Bridge. So to show this, let's jump into Shadow of the Tomb Raider and its built-in benchmark. Remember, this is a game from 2018. The benchmark, if you've not seen it, runs through 3 different scenes and gives a good mix of gameplay, and it returns performance as well as a handy note as to how GPU bound you are through the test. As a rule of thumb, you want to be more GPU bound, as when you're CPU bound, i.e. your CPU can't keep the GPU fed quickly enough, your graphics card is not working to its full potential. So to try and remove any possible GPU bottlenecks, I'm using the most powerful card I have, the RX 6800. So starting with 1080p results, we can see that when we're at stock, we are 100% CPU bound, and only returning 131 FPS. Now moving through the profiles, XMP, PBO and ACO all gradually decrease the CPU bottleneck, and by the time we're at the ACO config, we are now 4% GPU bound, and returning 151 FPS on average. Now a more realistic setting for this game is probably going to be 1440p. And here we're still 57% CPU bound in the stock configuration. And again, just like the 1080p results, as we move through these configs, we'll become less and less CPU bound. And by the time we get to the multi-core focused ACO config, we're now only 40% CPU bound. Now these results show two things really. First of all, the importance of activating that XMP profile on your motherboard. We gained a huge amount of performance simply by activating that XMP and running the faster RAM. It really shows how hamstrung Ryzen can be when using stock 2666 MHz RAM. And secondly, what these results show is that while PBO can sound like a great idea, the additional power draw required for it and the minimal increase in performance means it's probably something that you really shouldn't be looking at anymore. Games are getting a lot more multi-threaded, and when we can shift more of the emphasis onto the GPU by using a multi-core overclock, well, that can only be a good thing, and it's only going to get more prevalent as time goes on and games start taking advantage much more of higher core count CPUs. But hey, I think we'll wrap it up there for today. I hope this video has helped you out somewhat. If you're new to the Ryzen setup, or if you've just never really tweaked your CPU, you could be leaving performance on the table. And I hope as well that it's perhaps highlighted that going for peak CPU frequency isn't always necessarily the best option for you. But hey, let me know what settings you're running, how are you getting on with overclocking your Ryzen CPUs, and whether your system focuses on single or multi-threaded performance. I know everybody's system is different, so I would love to know what kind of frequencies you're managing to hit on your system. But I'll leave it there for today folks. Thank you very much for watching, stay safe, take care, and I'll see you all in the comment section down below, and in the next video.